Julian Vance stood at the panoramic window of his 55th floor office, a king surveying a kingdom of glass and steel that felt as hollow as his own heart. As the CEO of Vance Holdings, his empire spanned luxury hotels, cutting-edge tech, and global logistics. He had inherited the company, but he had tripled its value with a ruthless efficiency that had become his trademark. Yet he was haunted by a ghost, the memory of his parents. They had been small business owners, proprietors of a beloved local hardware store, until a corporate behemoth like his own had bought their block, squeezed them out with predatory tactics, and left them with nothing but debt and broken spirits. He had built his empire as a fortress against that kind of failure, but in doing so, he had become the very thing he despised. The world he now inhabited was a sterile echo chamber of yes-men and polished resumes. He yearned for something real, a single, unvarnished truth in a world of calculated transactions. This yearning had given birth to a secret, unorthodox tradition. Once a year, he would shed the skin of Julian Vance, CEO, and become someone else entirely. This year, he was James, a man adrift with a backstory of failed ventures and a wardrobe sourced from a dusty thrift store on the city's forgotten side. His target was the Grand Ascot, the crown jewel of his hotel portfolio, a place lauded in glossy magazines for its five-star service and flawless guest experience. Julian, however, knew that perfection was often the most beautiful lie. He wanted to see the hotel's soul, not its polished facade. He got a job as a trainee on the maintenance crew, a role so invisible it was the perfect vantage point. The contrast was jarring. The gilded lobby, with its scent of fresh lilies and quiet wealth, was a world away from the humid, clattering maze of the staff corridors below. Here the air smelled of bleach and quiet desperation. On his third day, he witnessed the hotel's true culture in action. He was shadowing the head of engineering on the 27th floor when the hotel's general manager, Alistair Finch, stepped out of the elevator. Finch was a man sculpted from arrogance, his suit immaculate, his smile a predatory baring of teeth. He stopped in front of a young housekeeper who was meticulously polishing a brass sconce. "There's a smudge on the skirting board behind you," he said, his voice a low, venomous purr. "Did you think I wouldn't see it?" The young woman, whose name tag read Clara, flinched. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Finch. I was just about to—" "Don't make excuses," Finch snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Make it perfect. That is the Ascot standard. Anything less is failure, and I do not tolerate failure." He strode off without a backward glance, leaving the girl staring at the floor, her face pale. Julian watched her shoulders slump for a moment before she took a deep breath, knelt, and began to clean the already spotless skirting board with a ferocity born of fear. Later that day, Julian saw her again. She was cleaning a recently vacated suite. He watched from the hallway as she arranged a small child's forgotten teddy bears on the pillow, creating a small, welcoming tableau for the next family. It was a tiny, unseen act of kindness, a flicker of genuine care in a place that ran on fear. He saw the deep lavender smudges of exhaustion under her eyes, but also a quiet, defiant dignity. In that moment, Julian Vance knew he had found the person he was looking for. She would be the subject of his test. That evening, he anonymously booked the Imperial Suite, the hotel's most expensive room, for the following night. He made sure it was on the floor Clara was assigned to clean. He was going to leave something behind, a carefully crafted problem. He wanted to see what she would do when she believed no one was watching. He wanted to see if the soul of the place was truly dead, or if it was just hiding in the heart of a single, overlooked housekeeper.
The Imperial Suite was a monument to excess. Spanning 3,000 square feet, it offered breathtaking city views, a grand piano, and a bathroom clad in Italian marble. For his test, Julian, in his guest persona, made a point of creating a mess that was chaotic but not destructive. He left clothes on the floor, used every towel, and left an empty room service tray on the coffee table. It was the typical aftermath of a wealthy, careless guest. The final, crucial piece of the test was the bait. It wasn't money. That would be a test of greed, and he was looking for something deeper. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple silver locket. It was worn smooth with age, its surface bearing no engravings, its clasp slightly loose. Inside, it was empty. It was his mother's, the only thing he had left of her after she passed away when he was a boy. It was worthless to anyone but him, a piece of sentimental, valueless metal. He tucked it under the corner of the heavy mattress, a place where a hurried or careless cleaner would surely miss it. Then he checked out, paid in cash, and retreated to an adjacent suite he had booked under another false name, a suite from which his security team had established a discreet camera feed of the main living area of his test room. He watched the screen, feeling a strange mix of cynicism and hope. He fully expected the locket to be swept up with the linens and lost forever. An hour later, Clara entered the suite. She moved with a weary grace, her cleaning cart rattling softly behind her. Julian watched, his gaze analytical. She didn't cut corners. She stripped the bed with methodical precision. She scrubbed the marble bathroom until it gleamed. She even took the time to polish the room service silverware before stacking the dishes on the tray. It was the work of a professional, someone who took pride in her job, no matter how menial. Then came the moment of truth. As she tucked the fresh sheets under the mattress, her hand paused. Julian leaned closer to the monitor. He saw her fingers close around the small silver object. She pulled it out, her brow furrowed in confusion. She held the locket in her palm, turning it over. He saw her try the clasp, opening it to find nothing. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, as if she'd hoped for a tiny portrait. She held it for a long moment. Julian could almost hear the thoughts running through her head. It's not real silver. It's empty. It's just trash left behind. The easiest, most logical thing to do would be to toss it in the rubbish bag. No one would ever know. It would save her time and trouble. Instead, she carefully closed the locket and slipped it into the pocket of her uniform. A wave of something he couldn't quite name washed over Julian. It was more than surprise. It was a profound, grudging respect. His test wasn't over. The real challenge wasn't finding the locket, but what she would do with it. He watched as she finished cleaning the suite, her work just as meticulous as before. When she was done, she didn't head back to the staff area. She went straight to the main floor, to the concierge desk. Julian switched his audio feed, listening in. "Excuse me," she said, her voice quiet. "The guest in the Imperial suite left this behind." She placed the locket on the polished counter. The concierge, a man with a bored expression, glanced at it. "Looks like junk. Just put it in the main lost and found bin. Someone will clear it out at the end of the month." "But it might be important to them," Clara insisted. "It looks old. It could be sentimental." The concierge sighed, a sound of immense irritation. "Look, our policy is for items over $500 in value to be logged and secured. That thing isn't worth $5. Bin it!" Before Clara could protest further, Alistair Finch materialized beside her. "Is there a problem here, Ms. Hayes?" He looked at the locket, then at Clara, his lip curling in a faint sneer. "Don't you have rooms to clean? Stop wasting time on trash and get back to work. If you can't tell the difference between sentiment and garbage, you're in the wrong business." The casual cruelty, the public humiliation, it was all there. Clara's face flushed, but she held his gaze for a second. Without another word, she picked the locket up off the counter, turned, and walked away, the small piece of silver clutched tightly in her hand. She hadn't binned it. She had saved it.
Clara's shift ended in a wave of exhaustion and quiet fury. Finch's dismissive cruelty had stung, but it had also solidified her resolve. The locket wasn't just a lost item anymore, it was a symbol. It was a small, forgotten thing of personal value, something the cold, transactional world of the Grand Ascot had deemed worthless. She felt a strange kinship with it. Her first thought was that the hotel's system was her enemy. If she couldn't trust the official channels, she would have to create her own. She approached the front desk not as a housekeeper, but as a concerned colleague. "I know it's against policy," she began, speaking to a young, less jaded receptionist, "but the guest in the Imperial Suite, I feel so terrible about his locket. Is there any way to contact him? A forward address, an email?" The receptionist gave her a sympathetic but firm no. "Guest privacy is absolute. The booking was made through a third-party anonymizing service and paid in cash. There's no name, no contact info. It's a ghost file." Clara's heart sunk. A ghost? The man had paid a small fortune for a room and left no trace. It didn't make sense. But she wasn't ready to give up. There had to be a thread she could pull. She thought back to her brief interactions with him. He was observant, quiet. He hadn't acted like a tourist. He seemed to know the city. Her best hope was Leo, a young bellhop with an encyclopedic knowledge of the hotel's guests and a friendly, talkative nature. She found him in the staff break room, nursing a coffee. "Leo, the guest in the Imperial Suite last night, the one who paid in cash, did you interact with him at all?" Leo's eyes lit up. "The quiet guy? Yeah, a little. Strange feller. Didn't ask for much. Just one thing, actually. He asked me for a recommendation for the best place in the city to find rare, first-edition books on urban architecture." Clara's pulse quickened. It was specific. It was a lead. "And what did you tell him?" "I sent him to the Old Quill," Leo said proudly. "It's this tiny, dusty old place over on Westmoreland Street. The owner is a grump, but he has stuff you can't find anywhere else on the planet." Westmoreland Street was 3 miles away, in a part of the city she rarely visited. After her grueling 10-hour shift, the thought of the hour-long bus ride was crushing. But the image of the locket, so simple and so personal, pushed her forward. It felt like a mission now, a small act of defiance against the soulless efficiency of her world. The Old Quill was exactly as Leo had described it, a narrow, book-crammed space that smelled of aging paper and leather. An elderly man with a wild mane of white hair sat behind a counter, peering at her over a pair of spectacles. "I'm looking for a man," Clara started, feeling foolish. "He might have been in here last night. Quiet, well-dressed, interested in architecture." The old man grunted. "Describes half my customers, and the other half." Clara felt her hope deflating. This was a wild goose chase. As she turned to leave, she saw him. Tucked away in a dimly lit aisle labeled Urban Planning was a man in a simple gray sweatshirt and jeans, his back to her. But she recognized the set of his shoulders, the quiet intensity of his posture. It was him. She walked towards him, her heart pounding. "Excuse me." The man turned. It wasn't the guest. It was Julian, or James, the maintenance trainee. Her mind struggled to connect the dots. What was he doing here? "James, what are you—" Then she saw the book in his hand. It was a rare treatise on 19th century Chicago architecture, and she remembered the guest from the suite wasn't just well-dressed. He had the same piercing, intelligent eyes as the man standing before her. The clothes were different, the context was different, but the man was the same. A wave of dizziness washed over her as the impossible truth settled. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't a maintenance worker. He was both, and therefore neither. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. The suite, the locket. It was you. Julian's expression was unreadable. He hadn't expected her to find him. He had underestimated her tenacity. Yes, it was me. Clara felt a surge of anger. What is this? Some kind of sick game? You test your employees? I test my company, he corrected, his voice calm and low. I needed to see what would happen. Clara pulled the locket from her pocket and thrust it at him. Here, this belongs to you. I went through hell to get it back to you because I thought it mattered, because I thought you were a person whose memories were worth respecting. He took the locket, his fingers brushing hers. They are, more than you know. He looked at her, his gaze intense. You could have thrown it away. Finch told you to. The concierge told you to. Why didn't you? Because it was the right thing to do, she said, her voice rising with a mix of frustration and passion. Because my parents taught me that you don't measure the value of a thing in dollars. You measure it in what it means to someone. And because I wouldn't want someone to treat a memory of mine like it was garbage. Silence descended in the dusty aisle, broken only by the hum of the old fluorescent lights. Julian Vance, a man who could buy and sell companies before breakfast, was speechless. He had set a trap to catch a thief, but instead he had found a philosopher. I offered you a reward, Clara, $1,000, he said finally, testing her one last time. She shook her head, a bitter smile on her lips. I don't want your money. I want you to know that there are still people in your company, in the places you never look, who have integrity. That's your reward. She turned to leave, the emotional exhaustion of the last 24 hours finally crashing down on her. Wait, his voice stopped her. He took a step closer. You're right. It was a test, and you passed in a way I never anticipated. But it was just the beginning. I didn't just want to see if you were honest. I wanted to see if you were brave enough to defy a broken system. You are. He pulled out a sleek, black business card. My name is Julian Vance. I own the Grand Ascot. I own the company you work for. And I have a proposition for you. I'm not offering you a reward. I'm offering you a job. Your real job.
Clara stared at the business card, the embossed silver letters spelling out a name that was synonymous with power in the city. Julian Vance. CEO, Vance Holdings. The maintenance man, the mysterious guest, and the owner of her world were all the same person. Her mind, already reeling, struggled to catch up. A job? She stammered. I have a job. I'm a housekeeper. No, Julian said, his voice taking on the crisp, decisive tone of the executive he was. You are a problem solver with an unimpeachable moral compass. That is a skill set I value more than any MBA. What you did with that locket, defying your manager, thinking outside the system, that's what I need. He explained everything. His parents' story, his disillusionment with the soulless corporate culture he had created, his annual undercover missions. He laid bare his motivations not as an apology, but as a statement of fact. My company is sick, Clara. It's riddled with men like Alistair Finch who prioritize profit over people, who rule by fear because they lack the character to lead by respect. I can fire him, but he's just a symptom. I need to cure the disease, and I can't do that from the 55th floor. I need a partner on the inside, someone who understands the reality of the ground floor. I need you. The offer was staggering. He wasn't just offering her a promotion, he was offering her a seat at the table. He wanted her to become his personal advisor, a new role he was creating on the spot, Vice President of Cultural Integrity. Her mandate would be to travel to his properties, undercover if she chose, and report directly to him on the real state of the company. She would be his eyes and ears, his conscience. "And your sister," he added, his tone softening slightly. "My security team ran a background check on you the moment you pocketed the locket. I know about her medical condition. As part of your compensation package, Vance Holdings will establish a private medical trust to cover all her treatments, present and future. She will have access to the best doctors in the world." The air left Clara's lungs. The crushing weight of medical bills, the constant, gnawing fear that had been her companion for years, vanished in an instant. Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they were tears of disbelief, of a hope so overwhelming it was painful. But a seed of doubt remained. "Finch, he knows I defied him. He'll make my life hell. He'll have me fired before I can even start." A cold, dangerous smile touched Julian's lips. "Oh, we're not just going to fire Alistair Finch. We're going to dismantle him. But we're going to do it together. He tried to frame your defiance as incompetence. We are going to expose his corruption as a catastrophic failure of his leadership." The plan was audacious. Clara would return to work as if nothing had happened. She was no longer just a housekeeper. She was a covert operative. Her mission? To gather concrete evidence of Finch's malfeasance. Julian had seen the fear in her eyes when Finch confronted her. He suspected it was more than just a power trip. He suspected financial crimes. "He's running scams," Julian explained, "overcharging for supplies, kickbacks from vendors. A man that arrogant and cruel is always greedy. Find me the proof, Clara. Find me the paper trail. My legal team can't move without it." For the next 2 weeks, Clara lived a double life. By day, she cleaned rooms, her hands raw with the sting of cleaning chemicals. By night, she became an amateur forensic accountant. Armed with a burner phone and a secure messaging app provided by Julian's team, she started to dig. She talked to the kitchen staff and learned they were constantly being forced to use substandard produce from a supplier called Prestige Provisions, despite charging premium prices. She spoke to the laundry workers and heard stories of being shorted on overtime, their complaints always dismissed by Finch. These were whispers, anecdotes, but they formed a pattern. The breakthrough came from Leo, the friendly bellhop. Clara, armed with a new confidence, asked him to keep an eye on Finch's movements. One evening, Leo messaged her. "It's weird. Finch just had a big delivery from Prestige Provisions, but the truck didn't go to the loading dock. The driver brought one small, heavy box directly to his office." Clara's instincts screamed. She waited until late that night, long after Finch had left. Using a master keycard Julian had provided, a tool that felt illicit and powerful in her hands, she let herself into Finch's office. The room was dark and silent, the air thick with the scent of his expensive cologne. She knew he was careful, but like most arrogant men, he was also lazy. She started with his computer. It was password protected, of course, but Julian, anticipating this, had given her a small USB drive, a keylogger. During her next cleaning shift in his office, she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers near his desk. In the brief moment she was bent over picking them up, she plugged the tiny, invisible drive into the back of his computer. 2 days later, she retrieved it. It had captured everything, including his password, Ascot King 1. It was as arrogant as the man himself. Now, in the dead of night, she typed it in. His desktop sprang to life. She navigated to his financial folders, and there it was, a separate, hidden set of books. Invoices from Prestige Provisions for cleaning supplies at 5 times the market rate. Contracts with a linen company she'd never heard of. And then she found the connection. Both Prestige Provisions and the Linen Company were registered to a single owner, Marcus Finch, Alistar's brother-in-law. It was a classic kickback scheme, a web of nepotism and fraud that was likely costing Vance Holdings hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. She copied the files onto a secure, encrypted drive. She had the smoking gun. The trap was ready to be sprung.
The following week, an official-looking memo circulated through the Grand Ascot. It announced a surprise Excellence in Service audit. A team from corporate headquarters, it stated, would be arriving to conduct a top-to-bottom review of all operations. The memo, of course, was a fabrication, orchestrated by Julian. It was designed for an audience of one, Alistair Finch. The goal was to make him panic. A panicked man makes mistakes. The effect was immediate. Finch became a tyrant unleashed, stalking the halls, his face a mask of anxiety and rage. He berated staff for imaginary infractions, demanded perfection, and spent hours locked in his office. Clara, watching from the sidelines, knew he was shredding documents and cooking his books, trying to hide his crimes before the auditors arrived. On the final day of the sham audit, Julian Vance made his move. He didn't arrive in a quiet town car. He arrived with an entourage. The company's chief financial officer, the head of legal, and 2 stone-faced security guards. He wasn't James the maintenance man. He was the CEO, dressed in a suit that radiated power, his face grim and resolute. The hotel staff froze as he swept through the lobby. Whispers followed him like a shockwave. That's Julian Vance. Finch, who was in the middle of dressing down a concierge, turned and the blood drained from his face. He saw not just the CEO, but the quiet, architecture-loving guest from the bookstore, and the pieces of his colossal miscalculation clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "Mr. Finch," Julian said, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent lobby. "My office, now." In the confines of Alistair Finch's own office, the confrontation was swift and brutal. Julian didn't raise his voice. He simply laid out the evidence on the polished desk. Copies of the fraudulent invoices, the corporate registration for Prestige Provisions linking it to Finch's family, and a detailed analysis from the CFO showing the financial drain on the hotel. "You have been stealing from this company for 3 years, Alistair," Julian stated, his voice like ice. "But that's not your worst crime. Your worst crime was creating a culture of fear. You preyed on the vulnerable. You bullied your staff, and you choked the very soul out of this establishment." Finch, cornered and exposed, did what all cowards do. He tried to shift the blame. "It was her," he snarled, pointing a trembling finger at Clara, who had entered the office behind Julian. "This new housekeeper, she's been trying to get me fired since she got here. She fabricated all of this. She's the one you should be investigating." Julian looked at Finch with an expression of pure contempt. He stepped aside, revealing Clara more fully. "Alistair, I'd like to introduce you to Clara Hayes. She is not a housekeeper. She is the newly appointed Vice President of Cultural Integrity for Vance Holdings. Her first official act was to lead the investigation into your professional conduct." The air left Finch's lungs. He stared at Clara, the quiet, downtrodden woman he had mocked and threatened, now standing before him as his judge, jury, and executioner. The reversal was so absolute, so devastating, that he simply crumpled into his chair, speechless. "Security will escort you from the premises. My legal team will be in touch regarding criminal prosecution. You are a disgrace to this company and to the memory of the good people who built it." As the guards led the broken man away, a stunned silence filled the office. Julian then turned to Clara. Her face was calm, but her eyes shone with the fierce light of justice delivered.
He had given her the opportunity, but she had been the one to walk through the fire. She had been the one with the courage to fight back. "It's over," he said softly. "No," Clara replied, a small, determined smile on her face. "It's just beginning."
With Alistair Finch gone, a palpable sense of relief washed over the Grand Ascot. It was as if a toxic cloud that had been hovering over the staff had finally dissipated, allowing them to breathe again. But Julian and Clara knew that removing the tyrant was only the first step. The culture of fear he had cultivated wouldn't vanish overnight. Julian called an all-hands meeting in the hotel's grand ballroom. For the first time, the entire staff, from the dishwashers to the front desk managers, were assembled as equals. Julian stood before them, not as an intimidating CEO, but as the son of small business owners. He told them his parents' story. He told them about the locket, and he told them about Clara. "For weeks," he said, his voice resonating through the vast room, "I walked these halls as a maintenance worker. I saw your hard work, your dedication, and I saw the disrespect you were forced to endure. That ends today. The soul of this company is not in its profit margins. It is in this room. It is you." He then introduced Clara, not as a corporate executive, but as one of their own who had shown incredible courage. When Clara stepped forward, she was met with a wave of stunned, then thunderous applause. Leo the bellhop was cheering the loudest, a look of pure, unadulterated pride on his face. "My first act as VP of Cultural Integrity," Clara announced, her voice clear and strong, "is to ensure that what happened here under Mr. Finch never happens again. We are implementing a new, fully anonymous ethics and grievance hotline, monitored by a third party, to protect you all. We are overhauling management training to focus on empathetic leadership, not intimidation. And we are creating a new employee profit-sharing program. When this hotel succeeds, every single one of you will succeed with it." It was a revolution. In the weeks that followed, the changes were tangible. Morale soared. Julian, guided by Clara's insights, invested in his people. He established a scholarship fund for employees' children. He started an internal mentorship program promoting talented individuals like Leo to junior management positions. Clara thrived in her new role. She had found her calling. She wasn't just fixing a company, she was healing it. She became a fierce advocate for the unseen, the overlooked, the thousands of employees, like her, who were the true heart of the Vance Holdings empire. She and Julian became a formidable team, their partnership built on a foundation of mutual respect and a shared vision. He was the strategist, the architect of grand plans. She was the conscience, the one who ensured that every blueprint had a human foundation. The locket now sat on Julian's desk, not as a sad reminder of a lost mother, but as a symbol of a profound truth he had almost forgotten, that the smallest, most invaluable things, an act of kindness, a moment of integrity, are what hold the greatest worth. He had gone looking for a flaw in his company and had ended up finding its greatest asset. He had set out to test a stranger's character and had, in the end, rediscovered his own. The story of the housekeeper who became a vice president became a quiet legend within Vance Holdings, a reminder that the most powerful person in the room is not always the one with the loudest voice or the most expensive suit, but the one with the courage to do the right thing when no one is watching.
What do you think of Julian's unconventional test? Was it a stroke of genius or a manipulative game? We all face small tests of character every day. Share a story in the comments below about a time you chose to do the right thing, even when it was hard. If this story of integrity and unexpected partnership inspired you, please show your support by hitting that like button and sharing it with someone who needs a reminder that good character is the most valuable asset we possess.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more CEO stories uncovered that reveal the hidden heroes all around us. Thank you for watching.